What's up guys, Djinn1, 2, and 2, and it's part 2 of last week's list day. Ah yes, that means we are doing the top 10 cards that can be taken off the ban list. This top 10, however, instead of ones that are obviously unbannable, this ones are unbannable, but with a couple of caveats. Yeah, they're kind of controversial, you know, they might actually impact the format, but I don't think they're gonna break anything. I just think that they would come off, and they'd be solidly good cards. And in order to do this video, I got my buddy Tommy.
Hi guys. Give me my wine.
No, I want some.
No, I'm being bougie. You're already drunk.
And I'm not really sure what the rules are going to be for this video other than they can't be on the last video. So anyway, let's get started. Top 10 cards that can come off the ban list that are slightly controversial.
Alright guys, so number 10 is Djinn, Releaser of Rituals. This monster states that you can banish it from your graveyard as one of the materials required to summon a ritual monster. And if you do, while that ritual monster remains on your field, your opponent cannot special summon any monsters. This was good during Necros format. Necros abused the hell out of this card and basically locked down your opponent's field from getting anything out that was of any kind of use at the time. You couldn't go ahead and special summon from your extra deck, which would be the most likely out to go ahead and get rid of the ritual monster that was on the field. On top of it, Necros had a lot of power behind them. I don't know about this. I don't know about the first two.
Number 9 is Perform Pal Monkeyboard.
Nah, you gotta talk about a card you don't know about.
I know about Monkeyboard.
Yeah, your turn.
I don't know what its monster effect is though. I think it's bad. No one used it. Yeah, it's bad. No one cares about this card's monster effect. However, we do care about its pendulum effect, which reads... Oh my god, this is a terrible time to be doing this video. Ah yes, this card was a staple in... Are you doing a dot on my chest? This card was a staple during Pepe format because what it does is when it's in a pendulum zone, if there's no other Perform Pal in the other zone, it counts as a pendulum scale 4. However, once per turn during the turn this card is activated, you can search one other Perform Pal monster from your deck to your hand, and the Perform Pal monster you would grab was Perform Pal Odd Eyes Unicorn, which was a scale 8 because this is a 1. So this basically was a scale 1 that starts at scale 8, meaning you can pendulum summon the entire spectrum from scales 2 to 7, levels 2 to 7. Basically meaning this was like one card full scale, making it a particular... Get the damn dot off of me! I'm trying to just keep going. Meaning this card was a... meaning this card was a 1 scale... Meaning this card was a 1... Meaning this card was a 1 card full scale during Pepe format, meaning that it was a very good card to search with your various search cards like Skull, Crow, Bat, Joker. How do you play Pepe? Whatever, more or less, at this point in time with Master Rule 4, even though we do have Heavy Metal Foes Electromite, I do think this card can come off the ban list because the only deck that's going to ever even play it and have any kind of success would probably be, Pendulum Magicians?
Probably.
And what are they going to do? Run a Perform Pal engine just to get their scales, which they probably don't even really need at this point. So I think bring this card to 1, polluted my audio, stupid ambulance. Basically, long story short, this card I don't think would impact the format too much, even though it was at 1, simply because it doesn't have a home yet. If more of the Perform Pal cards came off the list, like the Performage, like Plush Fire, or even Kieran came off, the Magic Spectre, I think maybe we'd have a problem, but as of it is right now, I think Monkeyboard can come off at a 1 and not have that much of an impact.
It's an anime cigarette. You know, all the anime cigarettes are all bent and messed up. They never have a straight cigarette on them. Super Poly! This card was awesome back in the day. This card right here, what it allows you to do is it allows you to fusion summon using monsters from either side of the board. You can use your monsters, you can use your opponent's monsters, you use yours and your opponent's monsters. You have to discard 1 card as cost, but it's okay. I know Heroes back in the day wound up using this card to go ahead and do kind of somewhat spot removals. Shadal's wound up using this card a couple of times. They used it to go ahead and fusion summon into their cool fusion monsters. I really didn't play Shadal, so I really don't know much about those puppet shits. But that's what they are. They're like little marionette fucking... They're weird. Anyway, those dolls use them, and whoever was a big boy playing with their dolls, good for you. In the future, I think that this card come off the list, and I think Invokes would actually be able to use it pretty damn well, being that they have a lot of different attributes, and it'd be kind of cool to see them go ahead and bounce back and forth using Alistair and a bunch of different monsters with different attributes from your opponent's side of the board to go ahead and special summon their cool fusion monsters, doing spot removal and at the same time gaining advantage, which they already do true with Invocation, but with this it just gives them one more leg up. The cost of this card is a little high, which is partly why it come off the ban list. Another reason why is because you do kind of require your opponent to have a monster on board. So if your opponent doesn't have the right attribute, a little bit screwed out of the box here.
Number 7 is Pot of Avarice.
What does it do?
I know what Pot of Avarice does. Target 5 monsters your graveyard, shuffle them into your deck, and then draw 2 cards.
You read that wrong.
This card was banned back in the day because obviously your graveyard doesn't count as inherent resources, meaning that it's basically a free activation cost as well as letting you recur resources from your grave back into your deck. So if it's something like garnets or things you need in your deck in order to activate certain cards, it obviously lets you do that in the future. In the late game, it's excellent. And the fact that it is a +1 out of the gate is just fantastic. However, in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, I think this might be a little too slow. You have to have some graveyard setup. 5 monsters is a lot to do. A lot of decks are probably milling more spells and using through spells like Sky Strikers, things like that. As well as with any draw card, we really don't want the draw card to have some sort of setup required in order for it to activate, because really what you want is a draw card that gets you to the setup, not requires some setup. Because if it requires some setup, that means your deck is at least working kind of in some sort of semblance. And the draw card is not helping you, it's making a good hand better, not a bad hand good. So I do think that Pot of Avarice could come off the ban list only because it does require a certain kind of graveyard setup. However, I don't think it would be a completely unimpactful card because a +1 is decidedly still a +1.
Hey Dave, I give you a bad hand good.
What?
It's the same thing? They didn't errate it? Premature Burial. I love this card. It's reminiscent of my childhood. Pay 800 life points, special summon a monster from your grave. Period. The end. There we go. Premature Burial was on the ban list mainly just because it was basically another Monster Reborn that you could bounce and reuse. That was a major problem in back in the day Yu-Gi-Oh! Premature Burial could come off the ban list for numerous reasons. You can go ahead and use it, and there are a lot more ways to stop it besides just the MST negate. MST doesn't negate, but it would stop this card's effect. Chain it to it, blow it up, and there it goes. It's gone. You don't even get the monster. I mean,
Monster Reborn is better.
Monster Reborn is better. There are a lot of reborn cards that are better, that just bring monsters back from the grave, or recur monsters from the grave to your hand that you can use over again back onto the field, rather than having them locked down to this card, its conditions, and its effect. And I just hit the mic again. Sorry for the audio.
Number 5 is Chicken Game. This card was put on the ban list mostly because it's an upstart goblin that doesn't give your opponent 1,000 life points. It makes you deduct 1,000 from your own life points, and being that it is a field spell, it is an upstart goblin that is searchable by terraforming.
It's better!
The player with the least amount of life points can't take battle damage or damage at all, right? The interesting thing about this card is both players can use it while it's their turn, meaning that if you either want to draw the card, you want to destroy the card, or you want to... or your opponent gains 1,000 life points, it's completely up to you. However, I think the card at this point in the game without Ancient Fairy Dragon isn't the best thing in the world. Sure, it's another copy of Upstart Goblin, it does let you dig for other things. I think the card's time is past. It at 1 would be okay, it's an okay terraforming target, it's an okay pseudo-space target. However, you're at most digging, what, through 3 cards with this, terraforming and pseudo-space, so it's just, I don't know. I don't think it does enough in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! To be ban-worthy, and the no damage burn effect or whatever it is, I don't know, I think it's a kind of a necessary evil when we have things like Sky Strike or Trickstar running around in the format. I don't know, I think it could come off, I don't think anyone would care at 1, I think it's okay.
Number 4 on our list is Zoodiac Drident. This card went on the list because it was in a spam deck that wound up spuging these things all over the board, managed to get 2 or more onto the board, and it was extremely disrupted, going ahead and having a quick effect that could pop things on field and get rid of them really easily. Nowadays, with Master Rule 4, it's a little bit slower. You won't be able to get them out onto the field as easily unless you wind up either putting it in the extra monster zone by itself or managing to get a link monster out and then having enough resources to put out more than one of them. Drident is a great card, however, but for right now, it would either be between Drident or Broad Bull that could come off the list, one or the other, not both at the same time. Broad Bull is probably more spammy and can do a lot more redundant combos than Drident could. Drident being on the board as a one-off disruptive effect isn't that bad though. So Drident could definitely come off the list at 1, maybe even 2.
Number 3 is
Shuttlecock!
Number 3 is unlocking the shock with the Shock Master.
Shock Master! All right. The Shock Master!
This rank 4 that required 3 level 4 monsters, Light Fairy, had the following effect, which was detach 1 material from this card and declare 1 type of card, monster, spell, or trap, and until your opponent's end of their next turn, they cannot use cards of that, they can't activate cards of that effect until the end of their turn. This card was banned because it's extremely oppressive in Master Rule 3 and below. It would be pretty easy to play this along with something else. Something with, like, I don't know, stick and chair would be super easy to get this thing on the board, and it's just super, super oppressive. It's a walking giant floodgate. And against the right deck, if you call spells against something like Spellbooks, it completely shuts their deck out. Something like Sky Strikers can't really play, and something like Mermails, you call Monster, that deck literally can play, what, Light of Sekka and pass? So, yeah, you really don't have many options against your Shock Master.
The Shock Master.
However, with Master Rule 4, I think this thing requires a little bit too many resources, as well as having to make a link monster to have actually anything else on board. So it might be a little too labor intensive. I think the OCG actually has this card unbanned at the point. Don't quote me on that. And it's not actually doing anything as far as I know. Meaning that I don't think it would be a problem to come off the list. Certainly as higher on the list, the way we're ordering this list, as the higher, closer to number 1 is the most controversial, as opposed to the last list, which was number 1 being the least controversial, because that was a really boring order to put it in. So I know this is really late in the video to mention that, but
I told you.
But overall, I think the card just requires too many resources. However, it is still a fantastic card, so I think it would be very good. It just wouldn't be super broke.
Number 2 is the Maxi Pad Syphilis Challenge.
What?
This card was banned because it's fucking good. I mean, it's Maxi. If you don't know what Maxi does, like, get out from underneath your rock and go play Yu-Gi-Oh! Like shit. Just in case you were living under a rock, what Maxi does is you can discard it from your hand as many times as your opponent spams special summons on the field. You get to draw a card 1 time for each. That's amazing. It was basically put it at 3 or put it at none. There's no in-betweens, because at 3, everybody has an equal opportunity to get Maxi at an equal chance and an equal point in time. At 2, it's kind of then throwing off the parameters of things. Now, not everybody gets to have it equally, and it winds up being the first person to get Maxi wins. At 1, it's definitely the first person who gets Maxi wins. It's super sacky. And at none, nobody gets Maxi, so, you know, the OCG's got Maxi.
However, at 0, the issue is spammy things like Doki can run rampant, and there's not a big way to stop them going the same.
What Dave just said. So, yeah, exactly. Maxi was a deterrent. It was a card that stopped super spammy decks from going completely ham and spooging all their cards all over the board. You play that Maxi as soon as they special summon, you get to draw your 1, and then they would be like, do I really want my opponent to draw out his entire deck? Or do I just want to go ahead and play the smart route, maybe get a strong monster on board and just hold down the field for now until I can play out my next turn? So yeah, Maxi could come off the list. Once again though, either at 3 or at none, which in fact it would stay on the ban list then.
Alright, unlike last list where I couldn't have honorable mentions because every honorable mention would just end up on this list, so therefore I couldn't do it, there are a couple honorable mentions that I could say that are unbannable, but they might be a little bit too controversial and might be a little bit too of a bad idea, so I'm going to put them here just so that I actually mention them so you guys are at least aware that I was thinking about them. Number 1 is Trap Dust Shoot.
Dust Shoot!
Dust Shoot is a really good card. It does have kind of a steep activation condition where your opponent has to control 4 or more cards in order to activate it. However, when you activate it, you can look at your opponent's hand, select one monster in their hand, shuffle it back into the deck. It's free information. It makes your opponent lose a card in their hand. It
breaks combos.
It breaks combos. It's an absolutely just fantastic card. However, it is a trap, and in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, pretty much the only time you ever have this massive hand of 4 or more is turn 1 and turn 2. So it's like, so it's still very good. So it's an honorable mention, but I could see why you might say it could come off only because it's a trap and it's a little slow. Next up is Metamorphosis. It's a really good card and it does have a couple of really fantastic targets for it. However, it does require the tribute of a monster in order to activate its effect, and you can only special summon a monster from your extra deck that has the same level as that monster, meaning that if your deck can't access things like Last Warrior from Another Planet or Exterio, you don't get the broken targets for it, but that does mean that if you can, there is those broken targets for it. So it's a better instant fusion, although it's a little bit less, or a little bit more situational. So I wasn't really sure how to quantify that. It's probably safe to keep it banned, but it probably could come off. I think it'd be probably okay. And the last honorable mention is Pot of Greed.
What does Pot of Greed do?
Pot of Greed draws 2 cards. This card is the most bare bones +1 simple advantage card in this game, and probably the only true staple. If this card was at 1, whether you're running 60 or 40 or some weird ratio in between, you would absolutely run this card. There'd be no reason not to. You'd just be a bad player if you weren't running Pot of Greed, or you just didn't have it, I suppose. But Pot of Greed is the only true staple left in the game, and at 1, it would be an absolute guaranteed spot in your deck. However, it's still just a simple +1. It doesn't do anything against your opponent's advantage. It only gains you advantage. Sure, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is completely an advantage game. It doesn't have a mana pool, doesn't have an energy pool like Pokemon and Magic, so the more cards you have, normally the better it is. So a +1 is more important in this game than other games. However, it's just a +1. Sure, it power creeps every other draw card in the game, but it's not like it's inaccessible. Like, there's millions of prints of it. It's not gonna like break Exodia or anything, but it's still very strong. So it's an honorable mention. It's not official. And we do have a dishonorable mention, and that is Elemental Hero Stratos.
Cause fuck that card.
And fuck Jason. Know who you are.
It's gonna be so bad.
And number 1 is Evil Swarm Exciton Knight.
This godly card.
Exciton Knight was a fantastic rank 4 that says once per chain, as long as your opponent controls more cards in the field in their hand as you do, you can detach one material from this card and destroy all other cards in the field except this card. The cool thing about this card, though, is it wasn't once per turn, it was once per chain, meaning if that first board nuke didn't work for some weird reason, like they had that dragon summon card in their grave or whatever, I don't know. There's instances where things can only be killed once, but not just killed in general. I don't know. You can always just use it again, as long as it's during the main phase or during your opponent's battle phase. That's just fan-freaking-tastic. This card is broke. However, with Master Rule 4, like any other Exceed monster, even though it's a rank 4 toolbox card, it's still only good. It's only good in a losing position, and in that losing position, if you can only make one, like, 2-card combo.
It's a comeback card.
It's a comeback card, but at the expense of making a link, at the expense of making a synchro. It's the only thing you're going to be doing that turn. It's not like you can extend your combo beyond that, because now it's just
expensive resources.
It's just sitting in your extra deck zone. Master Rule 4 really changed the way the game works. I think it could come off, like I said, it's number 1, so it's the most controversial. It's still a fan-freaking-tastic board nuke. Like, rank 4 detach, explode, nuke the board. That's just, that's so good. However, I could see it coming off because, like, if your opponent doesn't quite extra link you, but they still make a big board, if all you can do is instant fusion for something and normal something else, and you just, then that's okay. You knocked my pop filter off.
Fix it, Dave. Fix it. You're an engineer.
Yeah, I'm also kind of drunk.
You're screwing the wrong way.
I had to unscrew it to put it back on because I gotta loosen it.
Is that what she told you?
No. Anyway, guys, that was my haphazard nightmare to edit list. Thank you, Tommy, for doing that venture by going to the wine bar before this. We really should have done that.
It was always fun, Dave.
Yeah, except that made this a nightmare. I'm gonna hate myself tomorrow when I'm trying to edit this.
It's okay, Dave.
I'm gonna be like, fuck
Your
past
fans love
Dave.
you. I love you. Fans love me. Get off the fucking. Anyway, guys, this has been a great video. Tominator1212 signing off. You guys have a great night.
Wait just a moment. I can see you were about to click the subscribe button. Was I right? Tell me I was right. I was right? My Millennium Eye lets me see everything, including these other videos by Davey Boy. Don't be a stranger. You will always be welcome in my Toon World.